So if you look at the week, I think it's 13 module. What it comes down to is it's about intellectual property, and I actually have my own lecture about it. So please read through Professor Weiss's lecture, and this is my own. And so when we talk about intellectual property, what are we really talking about? And that's what is property. And it's anything that's owned by a person or an entity. And it's split into two categories. There's real property, like land or plants or things that you do to the land, and personal property, which is considered to be everything else. The USPTO, and this is a really good website to get to know. It's not the most attractive website in the world, but there's like a ton of information about patents and intellectual property there. But what they create, considered to be intellectual property, are creations of the mind. But they have to be in a kind of form where you can recreate it, or you can emulate it, or you can manufacture it. And so there are four ways that you can have intellectual property. And that's patents, copyrights, trademarks, or trade secrets. And so some examples are patents or inventions. Trademarks are like brand expressions, basically expressions that are unique to the product. Copyrights are creative works. And trade secrets are things that nobody knows about, like the Coke recipe. And so in terms of making it legal, you either have to file for a patent or get a registered trademark or copyright, and that establishes your rights. What these were created for is not only to protect you, but to actually set the benchmark level so that so the thinking is that they want to push up innovation. And so if you know where the benchmark is, so you know what to top. Why do you need IP? You need assets. And these are things that you can actually trade against. They create your copyright, for example. You can license it to other people. You use it for defense, basically to lock other parties out and to prevent copying. And finally, you can use it as leverage when you negotiate. Well, basically, if you bring more to the table, you have an advantage. Now, creative rights are things that you own uniquely. And for an example, you own the rights to your image. If people try to make money off your image, you can sue and get paid for it. Patents are a form of creative rights, so are publications. So in terms of trademarks, a trademark has to be some kind of mark coupled with a product or service. And it could be a word, color, sound, like the little Intel tune or whatever. That's something they've trademarked. When you see TM, it means it's unregistered, but you're giving warning to people that you will establish your rights to it. And R means that it's federally registered, that you have protections for it, and if somebody infringes on it, you can sue them. So trademark is basically to identify your good. The right for it, though, is that you have to use it. And you can also use it as a goodwill marketing asset. And so it tells consumers about your good. Trademarks can't be functional. Functions are protected by patents. And they have to be unique. You can't knock off somebody else. And here's some example of knockoffs that I thought were actually pretty funny. I actually kind of liked 511. And the reason why is these people are trying to take advantage of your trademark and brand without having to pay for it. And you're not allowed to do that. So first you register and get your rights for it. You have to inform the USPTO about the mark in use. If you don't use it for 3 years, you lose your rights to it. And then once you register it, you have to pay. It's good for 10 years, but you have to pay the licensing fees. The registration fees. Your trademark has to be distinct. It's got to stand out. It's got to be relevant to what you do. And there's a chance, though, that it could become genericized, meaning it could just become part of the English language. For example, Nobody says I'm going to go do a web search. Everybody says I'm going to Google it. And so Google has now become part of our everyday language. Is that a bad thing? No, not necessarily. Just because you know that when it comes to your associated product or whatever, people are always going to talk about it. Copyrights give you rights and control of your creative work. That work has to be in a tangible medium. You just can't have like the tune in your head and just say, hey, I have the rights to that. No, you've got to either write the music or record it or something. It has to be an original expression, and you can't copyright a fact. Now, Dr. Cho put together for you some magnificent artwork. Is this copyrightable? Well, I didn't say it was good artwork, but it does fit all the check boxes you check off for copyrightable. It's original, it's done by me. And so what do I call this magnificent piece of art? A rock group getting stoned. You don't have to register a copyright. The same thing as trademarks, you could put a C next to it. The length of a copyright is either the life of the artist plus 70 years or 120 years from date of creation. So what it comes down to is you pick the one which is going to last longer for you. That's why copyrights last a long time. These are the things that it copies. Derivative works, like I improve on something that I already had. How it's distributed, how it's copied. Now, however, if somebody does copy my work, I'm not allowed to sue. At that point, I need to register it. So I have to start a legal action, but I have to, by registering it, I go to copyright.gov and I pay a fee to the government. These are the things, I'm not going to go through all of them, they're pretty much self-explanatory. The big thing here is, okay, supposing I find out somebody's infringed on my copyright, what do I do? You either have to file within 3 months of publication or 1 month of learning of the infringement. And so this is where you start getting into the legal technicality, and lawyers could probably be helpful. The actions you could take is you could tell them to stop, you can send them a bill, or you can ask them to take it down. The DMCA covers a lot of digital content, and so it's an important law. An example of legal action is Werner versus Autodesk. What happened is Werner, Autodesk, for those of you who don't know, is a kind of a CAD program, and this character, Timothy S. Werner, was selling their software online, and they told him, hey, stop that. You're not allowed to do that. And Werner countersued because he just said, hey, you're infringing on my right to be able to sell this. And so the first round, Werner actually won. There's something called the first sale doctrine. This is why you're allowed to sell your CDs or DVDs or whatever. In terms of content, as long as you're not making multiple copies of it or whatever and you've paid for it, you have a right to sell it. However, Autodesk appealed, and the ruling was overturned on appeal. And the reason why is you have to look at the fine print of your software. Your fine print says that you are a licensee. You're not the copyright owner. Huge difference. The way you can think of it is when I rent an apartment, my landlord is not allowed to come into my apartment because it's my home. However, I don't own the home. I'm just renting it. And so I can't go out and sell my apartment to someone else. And this is pretty much what Werner was doing. And so the moral of the story is read your copyrights carefully.